at Byron Nelson High School, which is in Trophy Club, Texas. And so I graduated, I think, in 2018, which is a couple years ago. So I think about 3 years ago. And our school ran as vice president in the year 2017. So I was a state vice president in 2017, 2018. And man, just getting to be state vice president I know that with different states, like the position varies with what you end up doing for your state. But for us, we were in charge of everything election based. So when it had to do with the campaigns, throughout the whole entire convention, we were in charge of all of that, the rules, the regulations, everything of that nature. But man, getting to serve on the board was amazing. Was an amazing opportunity, not only for me, but for my advisor as well, to Mrs. Tammy McClure. But with that being said, I think a lot of times one of the biggest misconceptions that we have running for office is people automatically think, okay, I run for office and that means that I'm just doing administrative work, and even at the conference, I'm doing admin work and it stops there. Like I'm not really helping anyone in that sense. But man, like getting to see everything work out from I think it was Saturday to Monday, you're not only just taking care of the admin side of things, but with each school that's campaigning, they have a purpose in which they're trying to fulfill with their campaigning project, and you're helping that purpose to be pushed as well, and for it to make an impact across your state. So like in that sense, your purpose is also helping someone else fulfill their purpose, their greater purpose for the state of that you're in. And so getting to see that was amazing. And just being a state officer opened up so many opportunities, getting to meet people all across the state of Texas, and getting to meet people from different schools. And it was just a great opportunity that I wouldn't trade for anything. It's helped me out in so many of my opportunities today, where I'm at Sam Houston State University today as a junior. So.
What questions do you all have about for Kwame? If you put them in the chat, some of the things that you learned most when you got into that role.
Yeah. As we wait for the questions, one thing I definitely can say is that even getting into that role of being vice president for TASC, I never knew all of the crazy work that went behind TASC. Like a lot of people think that a conference just, ends up happening one weekend and then that's it. But man, like we are working all throughout the year to make sure that not only is the conference amazing, but making sure that everything is amazing for all schools across the state of Texas, whether that's a small school or whether that's a really, really big school, And so getting to see all that when it comes to like budgeting, when it comes to the state project. And one big thing about the state project too is that I never knew that there was so much, specifics that played a huge role in making it available for all schools in the state of Texas. Because once again, you have different size schools all throughout your state, and so you have to make sure that your state project goes towards can cater to all those schools. And so even getting to see that and taking one project and making sure that it's able to be accessible for all schools was definitely a challenge. But at the end of it, which ours was human trafficking, at the end of it, with the amount of awareness that was brought all across the state of Texas and even around the world, we were put on CNN International for an interview, and that was amazing coverage as well too. And so, yeah, getting to be vice president and just getting to work with so many different schools all across the state of Texas was amazing.
Jenna is back in. Jenna was our first COVID president, and she was Jenna. What were some of the things that you had that really surprised you that you had to learn as state president?
Well, like you said, I was the first COVID state president, and so that definitely was very, very different for me, considering you win in April and then you spend the entire year working on service projects and doing so many different things, and then for us it comes to like the very beginning of March, and then there's just a global pandemic, and everything that we've kind of been planning and working towards is a little bit up in the air, and we don't know what we're going to get to have. And so that was probably the biggest learning experience for me as a state officer, was just how to convert literally everything that we've done from in person to online, while still like having to transition from in-person school to online school, and like doing things just completely differently. And so that was like the biggest thing. But in a normal world, I would say that the biggest thing that I've had to learn is being a state president. I believe your biggest job is to learn how to be a facilitator, as well as know like when to ask the questions that not everyone's going to enjoy, because you have to keep moving on and you have to meet deadlines and you have to figure out what's going to be the best for your students, your school, and your state. And so like Kwame was talking about their state service project, ours had to do with drug abuse. And so when we were picking that, we would go back and forth between two really great projects. And so for me, I of course had my own opinion of which one I thought should be our state service project, but it was more of like talking to the board and just saying like, you know, we have to make sure of this and this and this. And so you're trying to make sure that like the other student officers, as well as the other people that sit on the board, are moving along at not a swiftly pace, but just to where you can get everything you need done at the time. And so being a state officer and being like a facilitator and stuff, I think is some of the most important things, aside from a global pandemic that absolutely like just throws everything up in the air.
So in the line of what you're talking about, and I'm visualizing pulling off on the side of the road in a conference call with Jenna's group saying, we have to pick a state project, and seeing Kwame's group hold up in a room at midnight trying to battle it out. There are two questions here. One, how did you decide the state project when everyone is so passionate about a platform? And Kwame, while Jenna thinks about this, I'll bring you back in, because the other is, what was a key skill that really helped you and other officers on the board when you disagreed? Kwame, you want to jump in on that, and then I'll bring it back to Jenna?
Of course. Yeah. So once again, like creating the state project is one of the things that happens. Like that's one of the first things that starts. And so a bit of a challenge was, one, we were first trying to like get to learn all of the state officers to begin with, like everyone's different types of like skills when it comes to communication and all these different things of that nature. And so getting to learn one another and getting to see how everyone works on top of figuring out the state project was really challenging. But one thing I learned in that moment is, yes, like we all have our opinions and feelings towards what we believe is the best state project for ourselves. But I think in the sense of working for a state that is so big, you have to put your feelings and your emotions aside at some point and think about what's best for your state as a collective unit. And so I think that was the biggest thing. And for us, yes, we had like so many amazing topics that we could have chosen from, but at that moment, one of the biggest issues in the state of Texas was human trafficking, and it still is. And so we know that, man, like, even though we all have our different opinions on what we think is best, what's best for our state in this current moment. And at that current moment, it was human trafficking. And even today, it still is. And so I would say, when it comes to even deciding what your state project is going to be, I think, like, definitely, of course, don't throw your emotions out of the door, but I'd say put them aside and look at what's best for your state and all the schools at that current moment in time.
Jenna, would you throw in some of the things we talked about, how you have those crucial conversations, which that carries on into all kinds of life right now, and how we have those difficult conversations, and how you build the kind of community where you understand that disagreement is not bad, and then the speaking with one voice?
I completely agree with what Kwame said, but for us, we just had a great divide. It was very 50-50 over what we should choose. And so my state officer group, we were all so close. I actually like go to school with one of the girls now that like I was an officer with. And so we hung out all the time, even aside from doing student council work. And so the problem was, since we were all so close so fast, when the disagreements were coming, and when I say they were coming in hot, like they were a little bit fuming. And so it was like, we had to like talk about and let everyone know that everything that we discuss in the boardroom that we don't agree on stays in the boardroom. And so since, you know, we're all spending weekends and weeks together physically and in the same rooms, we had to make sure that everything that we said just stayed in one area. And so for me, it was more of like, you know, which project is going to be the most tangible? Which one are we going to see the most positive results in? And then which one are we all going to be the most passionate about? And so that was the questions that I had to ask, and they weren't easy for people to answer. And it was definitely there was definitely a lot of tension. I remember a specific moment when we were sitting at nationals and we're having breakfast and it's just us and Miss Ham and we are all going at it. I think we sat at the table for maybe 4 hours and did not move. It was like time for lunch by the time we were done. And that is finally when Miss Ham was like, you just have to pick, like you have to pick. And so I'm sitting there and I'm just talking and everyone has voiced their own opinion. We know where everybody stands. And I just have to sit there and just say, like, what is going to benefit our community the most? Just like Kwame said, what is an issue that is so pressing that we need to like try to tackle as students, as well as what is our state and our schools going to see the most results in? And so that was just kind of how it played out for us. And that's just kind of the parts of like being a leader. Questions are not easy to be asked sometimes, and they're not easy to answer. And so that's just a part that comes with it. But it's just one of those things where you don't take it personal. And since we were and are still such great friends, it was something that wasn't too hard for us to like just bypass. We all had our disagreements at times, but we all ended up coming back together because it's a growing thing, it's a maturity thing, and it just comes with the job of being a state officer.
I have a question in here about, for either one of you, is how much stress was there and how did you handle the stress of high school and your responsibilities in state office?
For me, yeah, it was definitely, I would be lying if I said it wasn't stressful. For sure, it's definitely stressful. But one thing that helped with me was I had an amazing advisor, Mrs. Tammy McClure, which I'm pretty sure my school's on right now from Byron Nelson. But Mrs. McClure was amazing throughout the whole entire process. Like there wasn't a step where she wasn't there with me and encouraging me and walking that journey with me. But also too, one of the most important parts that helped me is that even though as a state officer, let's say if you're vice president or secretary, even though you have your own specific role, even though you also might be far away from your fellow officers, work with one another as well. Like keep in constant communication. That's what helped us a lot, because and sometimes when we're looking for ideas for a certain project, or let's say for something when it came to campaigns, I would hit up one of the other officers and then they would give me an idea. Maybe they need help with something. And so we would kind of bounce back and forth. And so don't think that you're all on your own and that you can't talk to about your fellow officers because you guys have different duties. We're all here to work together. So that helped most definitely as well. And then also too, like your counsel is vital in that whole entire process. Like my counsel, we were all on top of the game from beginning to end. And it was amazing because once again, you being a state officer, it doesn't mean that like you take up all of the work by yourself and then everyone else just sits back. Like the goal is that you lead everyone together as a collective unit and in love and in respect. But that's what helped a lot, was just having an amazing team, amazing fellow officers, and also to having a great advisor as well.
Okay, so I'm going to throw this question. We have about 4 more minutes. I'm going to throw this to Kwame, and then I'm going to go back to Jenna with what was the most important thing, or the thing that you got out of being a state officer that helps you now? Kwame, and I have a feeling what you may say is what did your experience in student council, what difference was it when you moved into student government in college?
So for me, yeah, student government in college is completely different. And student council in high school was, like, sometimes I say this and people think I'm just being a kiss up, but there are some days where even in college, I look back to my TAC memories and I shed a couple of tears just looking back on the impact we were making. Because once again, like in high school, the people who I was surrounded by, my fellow state officers and the members on our council, like everyone wanted to make a difference. They truly cared about people. It wasn't about a resume. It wasn't about getting into a certain college. Like they truly cared about people, and they knew that they had a greater purpose than just in that small moment. And so that's one thing that just really hit home, was that everyone that was there for a reason, and they cared and they wanted the best for their state. And so seeing that, and also too, for me, the biggest thing of just getting to meet people from all over the state of Texas was eye-opening. And that's something that I would never take for granted. And I honestly, if I could go back in time, TASC, getting to work at TASC would be one of the things that I definitely want to go back and get to be a part of again.
And so I'm going to go back to Jenna about what did you learn that's helping you now? And by the way, Kwame, Jenna will be working in Mrs. Abbott's office. So pretty cool. Here we go, Jenna.
I could not name on one hand all the important things that I've learned throughout TASC, because I forever will devote every public speaking skill, every personal relationship skill, every leadership skill to my 4 years in high school that I spent through TASC, as well as my hometown advisor, Miss Susan Waldrop, because I don't think I've learned more from Miss Waldrop and Miss Ham than from anyone else. And so, but I would say the one thing that I am really using the most now with the internships that I've had and the ones I'm continuing to start would be either my public speaking skills or my personal relationship skills, because with doing the things that I'm doing now, you know, working in the Capitol, you get angry phone calls from angry constituents, like you have to deal with those. And as an intern, you don't always know what they're talking about. And so it's one of those things where you have to, you know, hear their needs, let them say their piece, apologize profusely, let them know that you're thinking about them and you're doing everything that you can to try to like accommodate for them, but like still move on from it and not take it personally. And so that is something that like the whole debate thing through TASC and the board, like that is something that has taught me, as well as you never know when you're getting thrown into a situation where you have to speak for a few minutes into a group of people. You have to have a speech prepared. You have to talk about something on your feet. And so that is something that I've also had to do this semester. And it's not in settings with high school students anymore. And so it's one of those things where you have to know how to think on your feet. And I don't think I could have ever done that if it wasn't for TASC and Ms. Ham handing me a microphone sometimes, telling me to fill this block of time that like we didn't prepare for. And so that is definitely one of my most useful skills now, because it's something that you can use for the rest of your life.
We have just a minute or two left. So if you'll give them like your best wishes and what you wish for them as officers and what your piece of advice would be, and then we'll let people go. So I'll go to Kwame and then we'll come back to Jenna.
Yeah, so for me, my biggest piece of advice would be enjoy the ride. It's indeed going to be stressful at times, but the joy that I look back on, when I look back at my time at TSC, I don't remember any of the stress at all. I remember all of the good times. And so definitely enjoy the ride, but also too, remember that like, yes, there are a lot of like admin stuff you have to take care of, a lot of like the business side, but there's a greater purpose to all of that. Like you're helping someone else pursue and fulfill their purpose for the state of Texas. And so keep that in mind, that it's bigger than just the small duties that you're doing. Like there's a greater and bigger purpose. So when you look towards that, you'll go through the whole entire ride with a lot of joy, and just also a sense of purpose too, that drives it all. So that would be my biggest piece of motivation for you.
And Jenna?
I agree with what he said as well. But I think one of the other things I would say is to stay mindful. You absolutely never know the group of people that you are supporting and helping and affecting. And then that's something that you will get to experience throughout your whole life. And so that is something that I've learned and something that I continue to learn daily, as well as TASC is a beautiful organization that helps so many people come out of their shells and is so accepting. And it is one of the only places where you can have your own opinion and still be right. Your opinion is never wrong there. You always get to be a leader, and you always get to just let everyone know what you think would be good, and it be respected and accepted. And sometimes like that's what goes, is what you think. And so it's just one of those places that is where anyone can be anyone, as well as like you get to learn throughout the process. And so like you said, soak in every moment and just stay mindful.
So I am going to give you all a chance to throw things in the chat for Kwame and Jenna. There was a question about communicating with other state officers. We didn't really have that going when they were officers. This year with a national group, I started a group where we meet once a month with state presidents from across the United States. And we did that because of the pandemic, and it was an avenue that started. So it's been good. So any last words of wisdom, Kwame, Jenna? You got it? Okay, guys, this has been awesome. Kwame, you're leaning forward like you're going to unmute. What did you want to say?
One last thing that I'll say is that with everything you're doing, everyone's looking at you. And so humility is a big part as well, to always stay humble when talking and working with adults or even your fellow peers as well too. That's one of the biggest keys, and that I could give is just humility for sure. Yeah.
I cannot tell you what a joy it has been and what an honor it is to work with the two of you all. I wish all of you the very best of luck. Thank you for your passion for student leadership, for your schools, and for leaving this world better than you found it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jenna and Kwame.
I just want to thank you again, Ms. Ham, before the Zoom completely ends and everyone is gone. And while you're still on here, for giving Kwame and I the opportunity, because I know that any chance that you ever email me for things, like, I am looking for it and I'm excited for it because of how much you and student council did for me in my life in high school and continues to do for me in college. And so I'm just so super grateful for you especially, and for the organization as a whole.
Thank you, guys.
Indeed. Adding on to that, we love you guys so much. Thank you.
Hi, Kwame. Hi, Kwame.
Hey guys, how's it going? Hey, Mrs. McClure.
Thanks, guys.